I just finished top coating this piece and I had to top coat the sides. So let me show you how to top coat the sides of a resin block. First, I'm protecting the back side of my resin block with Elmer's glue. I have the block flipped upside down and I've already put a really thick layer of Elmer's glue on top of it. And you want to make sure it's a very, very thick layer to protect that backside from any resin drips that are going to happen while you're top coating. And this is the Elmer's glue that I'm using. It's just regular classic Elmer's glue. You want the glue to be fully dry before you get started on the top coat. So I usually do this the day before, put a bunch of Elmer's glue on, and then let it dry overnight. So the next day I can come into work and just get straight to the top coat. Now that the glue is dry, I'm flipping my piece over and then cleaning it off with some alcohol. This is just 70% alcohol. You can use isopropyl, you can use ethanol, you can use a higher concentration. Just make sure that you clean off the piece before you top coat it. And I've also sanded the piece down a little bit. You can see where it's matte on the sides and a little bit at the top. That's because I sanded it with 120 grit sandpaper on my electric sander. And that's not necessary. You don't have to do that. I only recommend doing that if you have some bumpiness or you need to flatten something out. Otherwise, you can do a top coat without sanding it down. And especially if you have little pinholes, like tiny bubble holes on the sides of your block, I don't recommend sanding a lot because those pinholes are going to fill up with the sanded resin and they're going to look white. So if you do have a lot of pinholes, top coating the sides will fill those holes, and I don't really recommend sanding in that case. I'm using my leveler to make sure that the block is even so that my top coat comes out even as well. And it looks like both sides are very even. I'm gonna leave it the way it is. And I have my block resting on homemade silicone squares. You can always use plastic cups instead. Sometimes I do that. It doesn't matter what you use. You just wanna make sure your block is not directly on the table so that your resin can drip down. And if your block is uneven, use a popsicle stick and place it under the cup until the bubble of the leveler is in the center. Now I'm going to start mixing my resin. I want about 200 milliliters total. So first I'm going to pour 100 milliliters of hardener and then 100 milliliters of resin and mix it together for about 2 to 3 minutes. I'm using a 1-to-1 ratio resin, so that's equal parts hardener to resin. And this is Mass Epoxy Art Pro. And this is kind of the trick to top coating the sides of a block the way that I'm doing it. The key is to use a top coating resin that's very thick or viscous so that when it's dripping along the sides, it doesn't create ripples. If you try to top coat the sides with a thinner, less viscous top coating resin, what happens is the resin that's dripping vertically will just continue to drip and thin out until there's only a very thin layer remaining on the sides. And that creates a lot of ripples just because of the thinness. But if your resin is very viscous, it'll stay put because of how thick it is. It's kind of like trying to drip water down a wall versus trying to drip honey down a wall. The honey's gonna have a thicker, more even layer as it drips down. I normally use KS Resin Liquid Stone Elite for top coating, and it's a very thin resin, and that's why I'm not using it today. I would say top coating the sides of a block is a pretty unusual thing to do. It's something I only do every now and then when I have to, because it's kind of tricky and kind of tedious and pretty unnecessary if you have a nice mold. The whole point of having a nice mold is so that you can demold it, pop it out, and it's good to go. But there are times when the sides are imperfect or you have some pinholes, and so this is the time when I use this technique. I've been mixing my top coating resin for about 2 to 3 minutes, and it's all mixed and ready to go. I'm gonna pour it directly on top of my block. And I'm taking my silicone spatula and moving the resin across the top of the block and letting the excess drip over the sides. After I've evened out the top coating of resin, I'm gonna run my spatula along the sides in a scraping motion just to even out the drips of resin. And I'm gonna continue to do this on all 4 sides until the resin seems somewhat even. The resin is still in its early stages of the pot life, so I'm gonna let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. It's gonna be kind of runny in the beginning. I'm gonna let it continue to run and drip as much as it needs to. And this will also allow the bubbles to rise for the next 20 minutes, and I'll go over it with my heat gun. I'm back here 20 minutes later, and I'm taking my heat gun and doing a quick pass over my top coat. I'm gonna put my heat gun over the top and all the sides. You don't want to do it for too long. You just want to do it very quickly because the heat will thin out the top coat, and if you keep it on the top coat of the sides for too long, it'll get a little ripply. So you just want to do it very quickly just to pop the surface bubbles. At this point, I'm finished with the top coat, and I just want to show you a close-up of what the sides look like, what the top coat looks like. It should be very clean like this. This is your opportunity if you see any fuzz to take it out. And if you have any last minute corrections or smoothing that you need to do it now. But you can see it looks pretty clean. I'm gonna cover my piece and then let it cure overnight. And it takes about 2 whole days to cure fully. So I'm gonna let it sit for about 2 days straight. And here's the finished product. The top coat is fully cured. It's been 2 days now. And I'm going to take the Elmer's glue off of the back and wipe it clean, and it'll be all finished. The Elmer's glue should be really easy to peel off, just like that. Now I've got the Elmer's glue off. I have a microfiber cloth and I'm just wiping down all the sides to get any little pieces off. And this is what it looks like. I'm pretty happy with it. I want to show you the sides and how they look. You can see it's not perfect, and honestly, it will never be perfect. Top coating sides is a very challenging thing to do because you're pretty much fighting gravity. But you can see it's pretty good. It's better than what it looked like before, and that's pretty much my goal here, is to make it look as good as it can be, and perfection is impossible. So just doing the best that I can is all that I can do. And this is what it looks like realistically. And I hope that this video helps, and thank you for watching and for supporting. I really appreciate it, and hope to see you again soon.